mean any harm. Really, he didn't. You see, he was just over here in Ireland from Scotland, and all he wanted to do was to play his pipes and make a wee bit of money. Well, you know what I'm talking about, do you, when I say pipes? Bagpipes, that's right. Yes, I knew you were a smart group of kids, yes. The bagpipes, that's right. Well, as I said, he just wanted to play his pipes and make a wee bit of money. You see, he'd go around to all of the marketplaces and the fields where people were working, and he'd put down his sack and he'd pick up his pipes and he'd play them. And people would stop what they were doing and come around to listen to the music, glad for the break in their work and their day. And they'd give him a wee bit of money for his music, and more often than not, somebody would offer him a place to stay for the night. Now, it wasn't always a bed in the house. Sometimes it was just hay in the barn, but it was usually someplace warm and dry. Now, all of that was fine and good in the warmer months like we're in right now, but in the cold winter months, well, the piper had a harder time of it, I'll tell you that much. Because in the winter months, by the time that season came around, his clothes had become torn and tattered. They became thin and his shoes got holes in them, so that every time he would trudge through the snow, the ice would form in his shoes as the snow would get packed in there with every step that he took. Now, how many of you have been so cold in the winter that you just felt like you were going to keel over and die? How many of you? Yes, well, I know. You live up here in the hills. I know you know about that. Yes. Well, one particularly cold and snowy night in the wintertime, the piper was trudging along the road, not a soul in sight. He was walking along the road as it curved and up and down the hills. And as I said, it was pitch dark and nobody was around but him. And he was looking for a place to spend the night. And his jacket was thin, and he pulled his jacket around his waist so that the cold air wouldn't sneak up and freeze him even more. And as he trudged along, the snow got shoved into those holes in his shoes, freezing his feet. It was snowing so hard that he was covered with snow, and his hair too was covered with snow, and icicles hung off of his hair and his beard and his eyebrows. And every now and then he'd turn around to see where he had come from. And the snow, it was coming down so hard he could barely even see the tracks behind him. And every time he breathed, it was like a cold volcano coming out of his mouth. But he was trudging along, wondering where he was going to spend the night, when he saw a light in the distance, and he thought to himself, well, where there is light, there must be people. Maybe it's a farmhouse, I hope it is. And so he trudged along until he got to that farmhouse, and he knocked on the door, and the door opened up, and it was an old farmer man. And the man, he looked the piper up and down and said, well now, I'll not have the likes of you around here. Now get out of here right away. And he slammed the door in his face. Well, the piper didn't have a choice but to continue down the road. And he pulled his jacket around him even tighter, trying to find a place to spend the night, when he tripped over something just in the middle of the road. Well, he thought that was rather strange, that there would be something in the middle of the road like that. And so he bent down to brush off the snow to see what it was. And it was a boat. And he thought to himself, well now, perhaps this is my lucky day. It's a fine boot indeed, and it looks like it might even fit me. So he bent down to get that boot, but well, it was stuck in the snow. And then he saw something else, and so he uncovered that, and well, it was the other boot. And he thought to himself, well now, this is me lucky day. 1 boot is good, 2 is even better. And so he tried to get that boot up, but it too was frozen into the snow and ice. And then he saw something else, and he brushed the snow off of it, and it was a human leg. And then he saw something else, and it was the other leg, and he continued to brush the snow off of this thing, and he saw that it was a man lying dead on the wood. And he thought to himself, well now, the poor fellow, he was probably walking home and had a heart attack or something and died right here in the road. His family is probably waiting for him someplace. Well, I don't suppose you're going to be needing your boots now, will you? I'll take that as a no. And so the piper went into his sack and he took out a little saw that he kept in there for repairs of his pipes, you know. And he cut off the feet with the boots on. And he took those boots and he put them into his sack. And he put the sack on his back and he continued down the road. Well, he was walking along down the road, and once again he saw a light in the distance, and he thought, well, maybe finally I'll have a place to sleep for the night. And when he got there and he knocked on the door, it opened up, and there again was that same old farmer man. I told you once, and I'm not going to tell you again, I won't have the likes of you in here, and if you don't go away and keep away, I'll come after you myself. And he slammed the door in his face again. Well, the piper continued down the road, but he didn't get very far when the door from that farmhouse opened up again. It was the farmer's wife. Listen, Piper, listen, don't you worry about me husband. He's a little bit ornery sometimes. Look, there's a barn over there, and there's a couple of cows in there, and it'll be a mite bit warmer than it is outside, I'm sure. You can just make yourself a bed of hay there, and you can be pretty comfortable there for the night. You're welcome. Good night. Well, the piper thanked her, and he started off to the barn. But then he heard the door open again. Piper, listen, there's a black and white cow in the very back of the barn, and look, she can bite and kick sometimes. She's a little bit ornery, kind of like my husband, and you can just stay away from her and you should be fine. Good night. Well, the piper went into the barn, and let me tell you, my friends, that it felt like stepping into the tropics. By walking into that barn, it was so much warmer than it was outside. And he found himself an empty stall with a bunch of hay, and he built himself a nice bed of hay for the night. And before he set himself down to sleep for the night, he took the shoes out of his sack, and he went over to one of the cows, and he tucked them underneath her belly, you know, to defrost it for the night. But you would have done the same thing now, wouldn't you? If you had to defrost some frozen feet, you would, right? Yes, I think you would. Well, the piper slept like a baby, let me tell you. But he woke up early in the morning, because you know what it's like when you live on a farm. You have to get up early to do the chores and everything, and he didn't want to disturb the farmers when they came in for their morning chores. So he got his sack together, and the last thing he did was he went over to that cow and he took out those boots, and he took the boots off of those feet. They were nice and defrosted by then, and he put them on his feet. And let me tell you, my friends, they fit like a glove. The piper could not have been happier. And he was just about to leave the barn when he remembered the old farmer man and how mean he was to him. So he decided to play a little trick on him. So he took those 2 feet, and he went over to that black and white cow in the back of the barn, and she was lying all peacefully and everything, just lying on the ground in the hay there. And he took the sawed off edges and put them in front of her mouth. If you see what I'm getting at.
Yeah.
And then he got his stuff and he went out the barn the back way, and he peered into a small window to see what would happen when the farmers came in. But he didn't have to wait long, because soon after that, the farmer woman came in with her 2 milking pails, and she didn't want to wake up the piper. And so she was walking quietly through the barn, and she always started with the cows in the back. Ah! Oh! Husband! Husband! Come quickly! Come quickly! Look the cow! She ate the pipe. I told you this was going to happen one day. Come quickly, husband! The husband came rushing in. What's going on here, wife? Oh my goodness, I never thought that the cow would actually eat somebody. Well, listen now, we have to keep our heads about us. He is, after all, from Scotland, and nobody knows exactly his whereabouts. We'll just give what's left of him a proper burial, and in the springtime, when the snow melts, we'll be able to give him a real proper burial, and that should be fine. And so that's what they did. They took those 2 feet, and they shoveled away at that snow as best they could, and buried those feet and put a marker on that grave. And that morning, instead of doing their normal chores right away, they went back to the house to have a wee bit of tea to calm their nerves. And they were sitting at the table and just about to sip at their tea when they heard, well, they jumped up like jack-in-the-boxes. They ran to the window. Husband, husband, look! It's the ghost of the piper coming to haunt us. And the piper then started to walk towards the house. Well, the 2 of them, they ran out the door as fast as they could, and the piper ran after them. And he played with them like a fisherman would play with a fish, letting them get away, and then catching up, and then holding back and catching up until they were far away from their farmhouse. And then the piper went back to that house, and he went to the hearth where there was a basket of fresh eggs and bacon and homemade bread and butter, and he made himself a fine meal for breakfast. And he sat himself down at that table, and he was just about to put that food in his mouth when he heard a knock on the door. Now, he wasn't worried about the old man and the old woman. He knew they were far away and wouldn't come back for a while. And so he went over to the door, and he opened it up, and there was an old man staring at him, looking kind of like he did the night before, with snow all over him and icicles in his hair and his eyebrows and his beard and all, kind of looking raggedy like he was. And the piper looked at that man and said, "Well now, man, what are you doing out there standing in the cold? Come on in, warm yourself by the fire, make yourself a nice meal, sit yourself down and put your feet up." And the old man looked at him and said, "I would put my feet up if I had any." He didn't mean any harm. Really, he didn't.